Today I want to talk to the wife who can't just say, "That's it, I'm done. I can't do this anymore." You're the wife who can't just pack a bag and leave. It's the impossible situation to be in. How do I leave when I have nowhere to go? If that's you, I'm not going to say just leave, and I'm not going to say stay. It'll get better if you just respect and submit more. I want to talk to you about a different kind of victory. It's a resistance that's quiet, and it'll enable you to reclaim your heart, mind, and body instead of handing over more ground to a husband who's neglectful and unrepentant. If we haven't met yet, I'm Lillian, and this is Shrewd Wife Life. Welcome. On this channel, we look at the difference between what we've been taught about marriage and what God actually says in His Word. My goal is to help wives use that clarity to discern the difference between a husband who's dysfunctional and a man who's really a dangerous predator, but he's pretending to be a dysfunctional husband. If you're sitting in that impossible situation and you've tried to get advice about your marriage, you've probably heard things like, "You need to get away, that's abuse," or "Why are you still there? How can you handle that?" Or you've heard the other side. "Sounds like he's a real jerk. Men can be such assholes. He needs to learn how to treat his wife better." Realistically, neither one of those perspectives really understand the situation you're in, and to be fair, why should they? Most people don't have the capacity that's required to understand what it really means when you're married to a wolf. Because when they hear about the terrible things a husband can do to a wife, they can easily get away from it with a click of a mouse. But for some of us, we don't have a click to get away. Not every wife is able to strategize that kind of clean pathway out. We aren't choosing between a good option and a bad option. We're choosing between two equally bad options. And so for right now, staying can look less destructive. That's the woman I'm speaking to today. I'm not going to tell you to forgive and forget faster, and I'm not going to tell you that if you just pray more, you'll be able to endure more a treatment that's the evil, and God will reward you in heaven. I want to tell you about the victory that I discovered in something called quiet resistance. It's a way of staying without losing any more of your dignity and worth to a man who's hurting you, not by accident, but intentionally. Because some marriages aren't just hard or have irreconcilable differences and conflict. Some marriages become a real place of bondage. A wife in our community asked a really important question. How do I become a contented Christian woman in life with a man who only wants my unhappiness? I must have victory over this world. I've heard different versions of this question, and I used to ask it too, all the time. But you know what? I think what wives like us are asking is more along the lines of, how do I stay because I've got nowhere to go and I can't leave? Matthew 10 verse 36 says it pretty clearly. A woman's enemy could be in her own home. When we consider what Matthew's saying here, that changes how we engage with that initial question. As wives who can't leave, what we're really asking is, how do I live knowing there's an enemy in my home that I can't get away from? That's a pretty sobering reality. In a lot of Christian marriage spaces, contentment is used as a way to shut wives up. I was told in a roundabout way, with a little more grace and forgiveness, that I could learn to be more peaceful, no matter what he does, and that true contentment is really about learning to bloom where you're planted. And those messages do work in healthy marriages, where there's strife and struggle and conflict, because in healthy marriages, there's also repentance and collaboration. But they don't apply when you're sharing space with an enemy, when the environment you live in doesn't have any repentance and collaboration, and it's pretty low on basic kindness and extremely high on cruelty that goes along with all that conflict. Churches that give this kind of one-size-fits-all marriage advice aren't helping wives who are stuck in these kinds of marriages. It's not a solution to make the wife the problem because she can't endure any more brutality. When you discover that you're married to a wolf, victory for you looks very different. Your peace and contentment has to bypass the man you're married to and go straight to the Lord. You can't fix a marriage when you're the only one doing the work. And you can't create a one-flesh relationship with a man who constantly uses the power in his headship to insulate himself from any kind of accountability. Let's talk about the part that almost no one says out loud. There are wives who choose to stay. Some stay because they can't see a way to leave. Others stay because they know leaving is more dangerous than staying. Neither one of those choices mean you like this kind of marriage, and it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're doing risk assessment with real children, real housing issues, real financial limits, and real safety concerns. I left for a month under the guise of a vacation. I was doing risk assessment, trying to figure out a way to leave with 2 preteen daughters and 3 dogs. The hurdle was too big. There's more to that story, but this video isn't the place for that. So I finished my vacation and I went back to try and figure out a way to make my life work inside that kind of marriage. Women married to healthy Boaz or Abraham types don't have to think like this. They're not standing in front of 2 horrible doors, trying to decide which one will destroy her and her children and pets the least. But a wife who's ended up with a wolf in her house, those decisions take up a lot of real estate in her mind and body. If she stays, that's door 1. That means continued emotional and verbal cruelty, spiritual and financial oppression, and maybe even physical harm. It means staying in a house where the second he walks through the door, there's a micro-atmospheric change, and your body goes into high alert. That's the feeling we think is excitement or butterflies. It's not. It's a stress response from adrenaline driving your body into fight or flight. Then there's door 2, choosing to leave. And for most women, that door doesn't mean freedom and safety like a lot of people think that it does. In most cases, it means more fear, not less. Because the reality is there's no income, no stable housing, and shelters that you can only stay in for 21 days. And that means you're taking your kids into a certain unknown and unsecured future, or you run the risk of being separated from them. And there's a husband who is more than likely going to escalate when he realizes he's lost control. Women who have husbands like this are 70 times more likely to be unalived if they leave, or as they're trying to leave. So when you can only see those 2 doors, staying can be the safer choice between 2 unsafe options. It's overwhelming. Housing, money, keeping yourself safe, keeping your children safe, family pressure from those who just don't get it, and church pressure. Oh, my stars, church pressure. Let me tell you, these aren't the kinds of marriages that can be fixed with a few sessions in counseling and a book on better communication, or learning each other's love language and praying together, or a weekend marriage retreat and a regular date night. These marriages aren't dysfunctional. They're dangerous because there's a wolf in the home. And some of us stay even after the children are gone because there's been no access to money, so you don't have any. How does that happen? He simply opens up a new bank account in his name and redirects his pay into it instead of the joint account. You haven't been able to build a career, so you don't have that to depend on. There's been no credit established or even a small RRSP in your name, which means you don't have one single jumping out point. As an older woman, I can tell you it's terrifying to make the realization that the only cards you're holding in your hand are all negatives. And that's just the tangible part. We haven't even talked about the invisible inner chains that also hold you in place, because your competence and worth have been systematically chipped away over the years. You've been convinced that you can't trust your own mind because every reality you've experienced was argued until you agreed you were wrong. Or the isolation that has crippled you with fear until years later, the whole outside world feels like it's impossible to re-enter. But here's the good news I want to share with you. This is the tiny shift that had huge results for me. I stopped thinking and saying, I am trapped and I have no choice. And I replaced it with the truth that says, I do have choices. It's just that every choice carries a heavy cost. I know it seems like such a tiny adjustment in perception, but it matters because victims do not have a choice in how they respond. Survivors do. When you decide to accept and live in the reality that your discernment reveals, you'll see that even when choices are hard and painful, they're still your choices. That's taking back the ground the enemy stole from you. That's healing. Maybe you can't leave today, but you can stop handing over your mind, heart, and body to a man who handles them foolishly and irresponsibly. And you can stop internalizing his failed leadership and headship like it's your fault. You can stop letting false teaching tell you that a good wife passively endures unkindness and cruelty, and instead, you can intentionally start reclaiming with quiet resistance. So what does it actually look like? It is strategic and internal, which means it's not confrontational in any kind of way, and it's not loud or something you announce. Quiet resistance is when you refuse to let your husband's behavior define your worth. God says you're precious in his eyes, he loves you, and you're his workmanship created for his good works. Isaiah 43 and Ephesians 2. That means your worth is grounded in what God says, not how your husband treats you. When his words and behavior hurt you, stop calling it normal or just his broken, wounded way. Stop minimizing painful patterns that you're experiencing from him. Quiet resistance is rejecting his version of your identity when he won't take responsibility for himself. When he calls you difficult or selfish, ungrateful, oversensitive, too sensitive, or impossible to please, that doesn't mean God agrees with him. God says you're a new creation in him, and he hides your life in him, not in marriage. Oh, my stars, I wish I understood this truth before 30 years had passed. God and his word overrules any human institution, labels, accusations, decisions, and opinions. 2 Corinthians 5 and Colossians 3. That means you disengage from arguments instead of looking for resolutions that don't ever come. Quiet resistance is not letting his choices govern your inner life. You stop allowing his opinion to define your reality. Separate truth from distortion, no matter how small that nugget of truth is. That means guarding your heart above all else. It means resisting false teaching that's feeding into the drama and dysfunction, and instead let God direct your choices and thinking. Proverbs 4, Proverbs 29, and Romans 12. Quiet resistance is when you're strengthening yourself quietly, and that means rebuilding your connection with God without your husband as the filter. Proverbs 25 says that a woman without rule over her own spirit is like a city broken down and without walls. And that's exactly what a wolf wants to do to his wife: turn you into a broken down city. Quiet resistance is how you rebuild the walls of your own mind, heart, and body. Rebuilding can be really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You can journal and name what's happening so your memory doesn't keep getting rewritten. And also write down your feelings, not just what you're thinking about. The behavior patterns you experience get revealed through your feelings, not your thoughts. Do a study to learn the difference between whether he's really repenting or whether his apology is being performed so that he can get something. Find other women who have actually walked this out. It's helpful to hear your own experience echoed back from someone who's already lived it. And I'll tell you, not every friend you have can do that. Not every woman at church can do that. And not every counselor, pastor, or mentor can do that. Unfortunately, most people you try and talk to are going to either minimize or explain away what they've never had to survive. So be prudent about who you share with and where you look for validation. Quiet resistance can also look like making a small financial plan, even if you can't use it yet. It can look like learning one skill, saving $5, understanding how the accounts work at your bank. Find and practice one small competency that belongs to you, just you. These skills matter because one of the things a wolf does is siphon off your self-trust. You may look capable on the outside. If you're anything like me, you're high functioning and appear very capable when it comes to other people. But when it comes to you, when it comes time to step out, speak up, decide, plan, or advocate for you, you feel either supremely selfish or completely terrified on the inside. So you opt out on you. So start small. Pick one doable thing, something private, something nobody else knows about. It's not about how big it is or how impressive it is. The point is, and what heals, is that you made a promise to yourself and followed through. Oh my goodness, sisters, this matters so much because each completed thing, no matter how small, becomes evidence to your heart and that inner girl that you can trust yourself and you're worth trusting. Now, none of that is going to change his behavior, and it's not supposed to. The purpose is to reclaim and restructure you and reject his negative influence on you. I want to wrap up with contentment. I know we talked about it earlier, but we need to come back to it because when contentment gets separated from truth, it can make destruction sound righteous. Being contented is an amazing place to live, but true contentment is very different from contentment that's been weaponized. For a lot of us married to wolves, or women who used to be married to wolves, that's exactly what happened. We're told contentment means a godly wife blooms where she's planted, that if you've truly forgiven him, it shouldn't bother you anymore, that you should be experiencing peace, and that love covers a multitude of the sins your husband keeps doing to you, right? But that's not contentment. That's learned helplessness that's being spiritualized. That's being trained to stop responding to what's destroying you. There's a difference between enduring normal relationship hardship and slowly breaking under isolation, neglect, and cruelty. One can grow patience in you. The other brings destruction into your life, and that's why you feel discontentment instead of peace. If staying is destroying your sanity, your health, your ability to mother, your capacity to think, that matters to God. Remember, no one standing outside your life can tell you if it's best for you to stay or leave. If you're married to a wolf, both choices are dangerous, and you know your situation best. But I will say this: God never asks his daughters to sacrifice their hearts on the altar of marriage. If someone has taught you to hide your destruction and call it contentment, that wasn't the voice of our shepherd. Thank you for spending this time with me and for letting me speak into a place of your life that's often hidden and misunderstood. My sister, if your husband withholds love, if he wants your unhappiness, that's on him. Your priority is not fixing him. Your priority is taking care of you, because no one else is going to do that for you. Seeing the truth about your marriage doesn't mean you lack faith. And staying when leaving is also dangerous doesn't make you weak or a victim. It makes you a woman standing on a battlefield that most people never see. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.